Olivia Rothwell, welcome to the webinar. How are you?
Hi, thank you. I'm well, thank you.
Nice to have you on today. Can you just tell us, you work, of course, for Predator Free 2050. Can you give us an idea of what you do there? So what is your official title?
Yes, of course. So yes, I work for Predator Free 2050 Ltd, and I am the project support manager under the research and science branch of the work that we do. So I kind of help with the contract development of all of the science products and research and tool development products that we fund. So yes, I'm not really the kind of on the ground person, but I kind of have that good overview of all the tools and systems that we're funding to develop for Predator Free 2050 effort.
That's great. I'll switch us across. Here we go.
All right, I'll get started. So yes, I will be giving a bit of a presentation and a rundown on products to projects, which is our kind of funding stream that we have on the development of new tools and technologies and best practices for this massive effort that we're undertaking. So really, I'm just going to give a big rundown of an overview of the funding rounds and what this kind of means, what Predator Free 2050 Ltd is doing, and then kind of give a bit of background on the whole process that we undertake with the developers. And then I'm going to just be listing off and going through all of the tools, where they're at, and their predicted availability. So I think that's what a lot of people are really interested in. And then I'll wrap up with a bit more of a discussion on some of the hurdles, the issues we're facing, gaps in funding, gaps in knowledge, things like that. So I will jump in.
Great.
So first, just to give an overview, the two tranches of funding that we have been awarded have been one through the Provincial Growth Fund and the second through Jobs for Nature. So our first tranche of funding was 6.5 million was allocated, and that was 12 companies, 15 products, 7 are commercially available or being trialed at large scale. And then our second tranche, which we've just put out a press release for, and that's kind of triggered this whole talk to take place, is under Jobs for Nature, and it is around 4.8 million that we've allocated, and that's across 7 companies, 11 products, and 2 best practices. So that's the kind of overview, but we'll get into a little bit more detail. First, before I jumped into that, I just wanted to give everybody a bit of a background. This is a very rough guide of the process that we go through when I talk about us funding these products. There's a lot more to it than us just handing over money. There's a really kind of set process that we undertake to really make sure these tools are being rigorously tested and trialed, etc. So this is a very basic, and each contract is totally different, but I thought I'd just kind of give a little bit of a visual, because most of the products will come to us with a prototype. Then they might start doing some heavy bench testing. And this is obviously for our product contracts, not necessarily our best practice ones, which I'll go into in a bit more depth. But so they might do some bench testing, really trying to test the prototype. Does it work? And then you might come with your kind of version 1. And that version 1 is what's going to end up going out into the field or cage trials. And you're just going to start to trial it. And that's where you start to pick up what works, what doesn't, what needs to be tweaked, the efficacy of the traps. Are animals approaching the traps? Are they not? Etc. And more tweaks take place. You go to version 2, more trials take place, and you keep kind of testing whether it's a trap, a device, a toxin. All of those trials are set up in really specific ways, and we talk through how the trials need to be run, making sure you've got control sites, and we really work well with the developers to make sure that we're happy with how those trials are set up, and that are they really going to give us the information that we need, whether it is, is the tool working appropriately, but also from, a business perspective, is the tool going to make the most use for, or the most sense for our projects on the landscape scale. So then that also is always tied in with NAWAC, and I've got two couple different arrows, because some of the trials might go from version 2, go through NAMAC testing, then do a commercial product. So all of this is sort of interchangeable, but it gives you a little rough guide on how much we work with the developers to ensure that the product is really fit for purpose, it's working well, and it's got, and sorry, let me just explain really quickly that around NAMAC, that's all of the animal welfare testing. So really making sure that the traps meet all of the welfare guidelines, etc. So that is really important for a lot of these traps to be able to say that they meet the guidelines for the specific animal that the trap is meant for. So whether it's rats, stoats, etc. So I am going to go on to the fun stuff now to talk through a bit about the products. So we've got kind of a overview here. This is a bit of a messy table, but what it shows you is a bit of a breakdown of the 2 tranches of funding. Dark green is our tranche 1, light green is our tranche 2. And you can kind of see that we've got a lot of tools that kind of go over all these different topics. So whether it's communication detection, trapping, luring, toxin use, or best practice, and tools around data. So, and then you can see on the bottom, we've got a bit of a timeline. So this is where some of the tools are already available and ready for purchase. And then we've kind of got this longer term by 2024, we've got more products that are going to be coming out. So that's a little overview of the kind of breakdown. But I'll go into each of the products in a little bit more detail now. And some of you have already heard from some of our developers from these webinar series. So that's really exciting that they've already been able to talk about their product. But first of all, so under our tranche 1, we've got Bafamiscal, and they've been developing Po'uku, which is out there being used. So it's exciting to see that projects are already picking it up. But really, that's a 6-month luring for rodents, possums, and mustelids. So it's a ceramic block, and that is available on the Connovation website. Then through Zip, Zip has a model that they've been working on for years called Remove and Protect. And it's kind of a whole grouping of different tools to be putting out there to eradicate. So lure devices, possum leg holds, communication devices, rats and stoats traps. A lot of those are also available on the Zip website. Next one, we've got NZ Auto Traps, and they've got their AT220, and so that's a self-resetting kill device for possums, but we've been getting a lot of reports that it gets lots of rats as well, and again, available on their website, and we've had great feedback on how that's been working throughout the country, so fascinating to see how well that's been operating in the field. Another one, we've got Zip Backcountry Camera, and so they are working on a thermal camera with onboard image recognition and AI for remote reporting. You can see in the background a little bit of an image of what it looks like. The idea is that it's really open architecture and to not scare off animals, and that the animals would be able to go underneath the hood of that sort of triangle, and it's picking up the animal and getting an image real time. And so they are at the moment doing a really large scale trial out in Southwestland, and that's their focus for the moment. So they've got hundreds of devices that are out and operating, and they're really making sure that it's fit for purpose, doing what it needs to do before they'd make it available for commercial sales. All right, next we've got Cacophony, and they are in our first tranche of funding. They did a generation 1 trap for small mammals pest, and initially has motion sensing. Again, this is a trap that's meant to be kind of open architecture and really hoping to get your last individuals that are tricky and hard to get. So that's Cacophony. Then we've got with Menaki Lawn Care Research, we're doing some image recognition just on your camera traps. So post-processing of camera trap images is the concept there, and it's to be hosted on PFNZ. So it's a tricky thing for all of you might know, but image recognition of camera traps, especially of these really small mammals, extremely difficult road to really target, especially if you're talking about rats and really tiny mammals that rush past, especially at night. So it's been exciting to see that research develop over time. And again, hopefully that will all be on PFNZ, so some of your image recognition can happen on there. And it will give you about a percentage of the idea is that the AI gives you a percentage of what it thinks it is. So it's 80% sure that it's a rat, etc. Be great for processing out blank images as well, so knowing that there isn't anything in there. Next, we've got Invico. So they've been developing their Spitfire devices, and it's a target toxin application device for possums and stoats. Again, the idea is that it's a more open architecture. The animal will sit on that tray, and the weight would trigger the toxin to be sprayed out onto their abdomen. And then they would start to groom themselves and ingest the toxin. That's a possum one that you can see in that picture. So they have been going through a lot of field trials right now. Last field trials went really well in terms of the possum device. And they had very few to zero possums in their zone where they actually put out the devices compared to their control zone. So we're really looking forward to that coming out. And we're looking at kind of December this year, hopefully for possum, but more like March for the stoat one. Then we've got Red Fern, and they're developing a thing called FlexiComms, which is a module communications for community groups and landscape projects. The idea here is that it's multiple different communication devices that it can operate off of, whether it's shortwave radio, mobile connection, satellite, etc. So the idea is that it's a module system that will allow you to send data from your devices, like a trap being set off, etc. But depending on where you are, if you have connectivity or not, the different communication system can be changed out. And we're hoping for December end of this year for that. All right, gonna keep going. Okay, so now we've got Invasive Pest Control Limited, and they're developing norbermide, and that's a rat-specific toxin in paste and hardbait form. Great to see the development there, and field trials have been really successful so far, so we're looking forward to that. We've also got Bafamiscal Easy Lure. I think Helen gave a talk not too long ago, so she probably mentioned this low-cost open-source lure dispenser for small mammals. The idea is that it can go into multiple different devices, luring for camera trap and monitoring, and easily deployed in a lot of your different devices that you already have. Next, we've got Hammer Force, which is an air-powered multi-species self-resetting kill device. And the idea here is it's using nail gun technology. So the idea is that it's using air to trigger that kill device. So really what it's kind of attempting is that you don't need, you could really go into the field with just a bike pump. So it's all done by air pressure rather than needing power. Or gas canisters, etc. So being able to kind of service it should be really simple and easy. So a lot of work going on in that, but we're probably not till mid next year for that device. And then we've got Good Nature, and they're working on their next generation of self-resetting kill devices for rats. And their focus on this device is really going to be your urban environment. So really working on your local or backyard trappers and getting a really good, solid resetting kill device for rats that can be bought at Miter 10 and is easy to deploy, easy to reset, etc. All right, keep going. So now I'm going to start to jump into our Tranche 2 projects that we have funded. So the Tranche 1, I just did a brief overview of those in terms of where they're at. There's more information on our website to dive into a bit more detail on those products. There's also some videos of all the developers explaining the product even better than I am. So I just wanted to give that a quick overview, but I've got a little bit more information that I'm going to give when it comes to our Tranche 2, just because they're all new. And yeah, you may have not heard about these devices as much as our Tranche 1 ones. So we've got a company called Encounter Solutions Limited, and they're going to be working on a smart live capture network solution. So of course, live capture traps is a big important part of the work that we do, but the technology around them is still fairly limited in terms of that kind of understanding of not having to go out to the trap every single day and getting real-time alerts on whether or not the trap has gone off for welfare purposes. but it's still really complicated and tricky and difficult. So the idea here is to develop an integrated locking solution that will enable the traps to be automatically locked on a schedule or via remote command. And the reason that you would need to do this is to just have for scheduling purposes and to really reduce the kind of issues that you have of visiting some of these live capture traps when you're unable to. So staff are sick or on leave or something happens and you can't go visit it. The idea is being able to remotely lock it. In addition to that, Auckland Council has co-funded Encounter Solutions to look into investigating a prototype for a cat chip RFID reader to go into live capture traps. It's a really tricky one because the cages are metal and the chip readers don't like metal to be encased in a metal cage. So we're trying to, Simon at Encounter Solutions was trying to do things off the shelf, but it might not work. So investigating that has been a journey, but we're gonna keep going on it and see where it gets to. But we do see that will be a really critical piece to the picture of live capture down the line. So another contract with Encounter Solutions is a learning management system. So to talk a little bit about this, basically all of these kind of large landscape scale wireless systems are complex. They're difficult to put out in the field. They're difficult to manage at times, depending on the connectivity that you're using, whether it's mobile or satellite. You're putting them out into really remote, challenging landscapes because that's where you can't get to all the time. So there's a lot around the best practice of how we actually develop and integrate remote monitoring into our landscape projects. So he's going to be starting to develop a best practice guidance on how you use these systems. Part of it will be kind of open source, open and available for everybody. Which is really exciting because it will talk about how these systems work, the technology behind it, what does LoRa mean versus satellite connectivity versus mobile connectivity, and then talking about really the suitability for these different landscapes, the constraints of the technology, what you need to have in mind if you're wanting to develop it or deploy it within your project. And how best to use them in different phases of eradication. So that's going to be openly available for everyone to get access to and learn about all of this through videos, PDFs, etc. And then the other part of that will be really specific systems for Celium. So that will be closed. If you're a client, they'll go into much more detail on the Celium system. Our next one, this is quite an understatement of the complexity of this project and where it's heading. So I'm going to give a brief overview of it, but it's a lot deeper than what I've got here. But this is a partnering with Korihaha Whakaho, and they're going to be contextualizing pest eradication practices using traditional indigenous knowledge. So it's a fascinating one around the best practice to demonstrate how the use of newly available pest eradication technologies can work in alignment with traditional indigenous knowledge. So it's a really critical for one project for us to really start to match up all these new tools and technologies that are coming out, but also using it to kind of guide their own application of Mātauranga. So it's really important work that we're kind of diving into to really balance this idea of all this new technology, but how it aligns with this traditional knowledge. So we're really looking forward to kind of the output of that, which will be written in audiovisual learnings. Again, a bit of an understatement of the complexity around this project, but it's an exciting one. So here we've got Critter Solutions. Again, like I mentioned, Helen gave an awesome talk not too long ago on some of the tools that they're developing. So I won't go into this into too much detail, but they are working on a low-cost, low-power, long-life smart camera monitoring system. So cost-effective, intelligent camera for predator surveillance. And it's based on their Critter Pick imaging technology with real-time species identification. And they're going to be developing an online data management interface along with it. And it's really kind of the Critter Pick solution from a box onto a tree posted mounted device. And the thing that's exciting about this one and Critter Solutions, that it's a great looking at how all these different technologies can come together, and we can use them all to benefit each other. So the easy lure, for instance, that Bafamiscal is developing, would be partnered with this low-powered camera. And so those are the kind of things that we're starting to look at, as how all these tools can be integrated and used together. So we're hoping for kind of January 2024 is when we're looking at this one to come out. And then again with Critter Solutions Limited, and just by the way, it's a partnership between Bafamiscal and Redfern Solutions is this company, is their species-specific kill trap using critter pick technology. So it's using the same technology. The idea is having a smart self-resetting kill trap for possum, rat, stoats, and the concept here is for real-time species identification to prevent non-targets. One of the big issues that a lot of people do have is this, us catching non-targets in some of these traps. So we are devising a lot of these traps to, animals aren't as comfortable as coming into the traps. So being able to have this open architecture of the trap, animals are more keen to kind of come into it, and with the critter picks technology can identify. So it's really keeping everything safe from humans to pets to non-targets, and optional communications will allow the uploading of images to the cloud. Also around June 2024 is the idea. All right, I'm going to keep going. So we've got Invico, which I've already previously talked about the Spitfires, the possum and stoat Spitfire, but we're also funding them to do the rat Spitfire. So the rat Spitfire, obviously same concept, but just focusing on just rats. And the idea, again, is to be left unattended for a year, capable of killing about 100 rats before service intervals. So the sensors on it will ensure that only rats receive individually targeted measures of toxin, and it's the same concept as the others. The toxin is sprayed on the abdomen and subsequently ingested through grooming. And this will be combined with an automatic lure system. June 2024 is the idea there. So another one we've got is eTrapper Limited, and it's their bait monitor, and it's a low-cost multi-purpose sensor that reports on the volume of bait within a bait station. And then data is supplied from the device through wireless communications, and it's going to be linking up with PFNZ. So this is a fantastic tool for community groups, and it's being trialed right now with great results. And it's not just for understanding for servicing your traps or your bait stations. It's also really useful for detection. So if you're getting alerts that your bait levels are going down, you are, you're really then getting an indication of detection of something in the area as well. This is kind of one of those tools, if you remember that graph that I showed, that they've already had a prototype, they already had a version 1. So we're funding the kind of side of doing more trials and version 2 to commercialization, hence it being able to come out in December 2022. So a lot of these tools, when we funded them, were at different parts in their development pathway. So some of them were already at their version 2 and needed to just do more funding to do trials and commercialization. So that's a big difference in terms of where some of these are at and when they're going to be available. Most of you have all heard about PFNZ, I'm sure. So we are giving some funding to PFNZ to just do some more functionality within the system. So this is a planning and implementation function for landscape eradication projects. And so it's a deployment module is one of them. And it's to support the initial setting up of new predator eradication projects with improved mapping functionalities. And then we are also able to kind of develop they're going to be developing a part of tracking landowner permissions and device installation. So more a little bit around the CRM side of that, better understanding landowner information, who owns the house, do you need to knock on the door before you go to service a trap? Is there a dog? Lock the gate, all those sort of health and safety measures that need to be really well documented if a contractor or anyone's going to be going into someone's home to check a trap. So That is, yeah, by October this year, they'll have that up and functioning on the TrapNZ app. Another project that we're doing with TrapNZ is they are going to be looking at open software services that allow sensor devices to communicate directly with the online TrapNZ. So it's, again, all around that communication, detection, remote sensing devices of getting in alerts to if a trap, et cetera, has come off. And it's, yeah, just improving the TrapNZ system on how those alerts come into it, and looking at how you can just buy off-the-shelf sensor network to deploy within your community around October as well. And we previously funded Cacophony for their version 1 of this trap, but version 2 is sort of to accelerate the evolution of the first version of this high catch rate trap. And again, open architecture, hoping to kind of entice more animals to come in, but this new version is going to incorporate quite a few other elements. So enabling multi-catches at night, intelligent trigger to minimize the risk of any bycatch, and automated killing to remove the need for daily human servicing. So it's really skyrocketing from version 1 to version 2 is what we're funding here. So June 23 is what we're looking for in terms of estimated availability. All right, so ZIP, we funded them in our first round and we're funding them again in our second round. And there's quite a few things coming out of this contract. And so this is really research, testing, and trialing, all in partnership with Predator Free Southwestland. And so some of the tools that we're going to be coming out of this contract is looking into swarm-driven remote reporting systems. So Swarm is a new communications, satellite communications network that is being launched. And so the whole idea is it's low orbit satellites. So the company has put out thousands and thousands of low orbit satellites. The idea is to make it a lot cheaper. So it's not like Iridium where your satellites are quite high up. This is, yeah, and I don't understand exactly how it works, but the idea is that it's cheaper. So that's what we're hoping for. So much of where we work does not have communication, doesn't have mobile connection. So we're looking at satellite, but how can we make it cheaper? So they're really kind of diving into how that would work, how do we get devices linked up to the Swarm network, et cetera. They're also developing a wildlife-friendly bait station. Kia are their main the main species that they're trying to protect out there. So really making sure that Kia can't get into those bait stations is what they're working on. And then they're going to be putting out a best practice guide for toxin-laced rodents and an operational guide for the 1080 to 0 approach. And they are also developing the Zip-N trap, so another trap that they're developing under this contract. So there's a lot going on within there, a lot of trialing, testing new things. So it's really an exciting approach. And you'll start to see some of those tools being put out through, or best practices being put out through December this year, all the way till June next year. All right, bear with me. I think I'm done with all of the tools themselves. So that is my very quick rundown of all the different things that we're funding. It's a lot. So all of this is up on our website. So you'll be able to kind of go through our Tranche 1 and our Tranche 2 and get a little bit of a rundown of who these companies are, links to their websites, and that's where you can contact them if you have any questions specifically on the product. So all of that on the PF2050.co.nz. So just to wrap up on the talking section of this, I just want to talk through a bit around what's happening behind the scenes on all of this work. There's a lot of challenges that all of these developers are up against. So COVID has been nasty for all of these developers, not just from a personnel perspective, but companies are experiencing up to 2-year lead times on critical components. So they may have gone through the whole process of prototyping and getting everything together, knowing exactly what components they need, and they're starting to get to the commercialization manufacturing stage. And with COVID, they've gone to place their orders, and a component might be 2-year lead time. And that's devastating. It's a huge hit to these companies because it does mean that they need to redesign. They can't wait those 2 years. So we've had a lot of products where they've kind of come to that stage and need to go back to the drawing board a bit, which also means you need to trial again. You need to bench test again. So that is tough. It's been really tough on them, and they've all gotten through all this admirably and been incredibly flexible and doing the best they can. Unfortunately, increasing component costs, we all know everything is more expensive at the moment. So it is impacting the unit price. All of them are striving as best they can to make sure that the price of these units are going to be affordable, and they're going to be, widespread uptake across New Zealand because it's affordable, but the components are increasing. So the first kind of couple years might be tough. We hope by maybe the time that some of these products are actually coming to market, unit prices have come down, and they may have been able to eliminate some of these issues. So one of the other things is they're required to mass order product parts in advance. So with these 2-year lead times, some of them can cut the line, but you need to order thousands and thousands in advance. So it's impacting their budgets. It's impacting their overall ability to be agile as a company. So it's been challenging for them. So all of these delivery of commercial product estimates that I've got up on those slides are all estimates, and they're very likely to be adjusted and need to be adjusted over time. And then we've got other challenges with cage trial availability, so space, increased cost. And again, all of that impacts unit price. So all of these increases across the board impacting the unit price. But again, the whole idea is to keep the costs of all of these low and competitive. So what's kind of next in terms of, where are we at with all of this? Obviously, all the developers behind the scenes are going to be working very hard to get these products out there, testing, trialing, and getting feedback, doing the best they can. A lot of the trials that they do with our large landscape projects. They're always looking for other projects and community groups, et cetera, who want to trial and test and see how they work. But the kind of things that we're really working on from our side, from Predator Free 2050 Limited, is what do the customers need to build confidence in purchasing these new tools? They're new, they're different. How do we ensure that there's a lot of confidence around purchasing these tools? And some of that to me comes down to how we run these contracts. And like I mentioned before, there's a lot around the trials and information on how trials are run, where they're run. Each tool will operate very differently in a different habitat and different place. And it's impossible for our funds to be able to help trial these tools in this massive range of habitats and places and eradication phases that they need to. So it's really around building that confidence that these tools operate and work in the kind of locations where you need them to. So focus that we really need to look at is, are they the right tools for the job? How should they be used? What's their best practice and validation of tools in EV-led eradication projects? So we really need to put a lot of funding, time, and effort into best practice around these tools. So it's not just about developing more and more of them and different ones, but we've really got to start to focus on how they should be used. And so we need to really put a lot of funding and effort now into that. So as the tools become available, that we really kind of dive into the research of them and the best practice of them. And then again, what other new tools are needed? We have to keep asking that question. We can't stop asking that question. But at the moment, we've got quite a long list of tools that I just went through. And we think that a priority needs to be focusing on how we use those and how we use those well. So that kind of wraps up my overview of what we're doing. And I guess we possibly jump into questions.
I'll bring us across. Yeah, I'll bring us across to the screen.
Yeah, I can see the chat's chat box going off. So
yeah, what I'll do is I'll get the questions sent to me by Margaret, and we'll just go into them. If you did great there, thanks very much. There's a lot of info there. You must be impressed.
A lot of info. Yeah. Sorry, it's a bit of just a really quick rundown of everything. But I think that's the best way to just give everyone this really high level overview of the things that are coming out over the next few years.
And are you really, as well as being excited, but are you really impressed with the kind of people that are coming up with these, brand new ideas and processes?
Yeah, I mean, that's something for me to jump onto. So I work really closely with all these developers, and that's sort of my role, is to see how they're tracking, see how they're going, talk through these incredible hurdles that they're jumping through right now because of COVID. And so, almost on a weekly basis, we're talking through it, and they have been so resilient, and their passion and their dedication to this is unbelievable. And we all have to remember that they are companies that are trying to be profitable and run a business. They all have families, and we always have to kind of really keep a lot of that in mind, that they're up against a lot with that kind of the business side, the business development of their companies. So it's not just about putting out trapping devices, et cetera. It's about running a successful, Kiwi-led innovative companies. So I am hugely impressed with how hard they're all working, how passionate they are, and the hurdles that they've been going over these past 2 years. It's constant hurdles they're up against.
Couple of quick questions. Sarah from Restore Rodney East asked during the presentation, do the companies seek more locations to test equipment? So how can we tap into that? And Roger came in saying at Bream Head, we are keen to provide a great location for equipment trials. How can they tap into any of that potentially?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's a little bit of a tricky one, because when they're running trials, the trials have to be really specific on how they're set up, because we can't just put traps out and see how they go. The place where they need to be set up, you need to have a really good trial design. So you've got a control site, and you've got your site where you might put out the traps or the toxin, et cetera. And you need to ensure that you're not your data that's coming out of these trials is actually, you can interpret it to be able to say, yes, this is successful, or no, it's not. So the actual places that we need to pick to run these trials are really, really specific in terms of being able to have a good control site, and being able to have a site that you're post monitoring, because what they'll do is they'll monitor the site beforehand to see what the population, or at least an indice of the population of, let's say, rats before the trial. They need to have their control site, they run the trial, and then they do post monitoring of that site. So it's really a case by case in terms of what they, really case by case in terms of what kind of site they need. So it's, I guess in terms of being able to tap into it, I'm always happy to take suggestions that can be emailed to me of sites that they have and what type of tool they might be interested in trialing. And then it's really, again, up to the developers if they think that it's going to match their needs in terms of telling them what they need. So some of the products have struggled with just having the right. You need to have over 20% RTC of rats, for instance, to being a good site to trial in.
Good answer. Here's one from BF. Thanks for your talk. Will research funding be offered in the near future? Example, PhD scholarships or the postdoc funds that were offered in 2021.
Good question. So we don't have anything right at the moment, but it's obviously something that we need to keep pushing because, like I said, one of our big things that we need to focus on next is around the best practice of these tools and the heavy research on how they work, how well they work. So we want to continually be putting out and building capacity. I think that's the biggest thing in this sector, is that needing to build our capacity of the younger generation of scientists and research in this space. So it's a focus of ours. We don't have a call for proposals right at this moment, but please follow social media, follow LinkedIn, follow Facebook, and our website for any announcements.
Pat asks, is there development on methods to hunt for the last predators, example, dogs, cats, robots, smelling machines?
Yeah, so we recently we had so there's a whole other round of funding that we put out on our research side, and we did a press release not long ago. So if you jump onto our website, you'll be able to look at some of the really heavy research side that we're looking on, which is things like all focusing on the last hard to get predators. So this, what I'm talking about here is all the kind of development of the tools, but we've got a huge research side that is going into a lot of that around detecting your last few. I just saw a question around eDNA, looking at eDNA. And so, yeah, hop on our website to take a look at all the research stuff that we're doing, which is your more long-term science and research stuff that we're doing. This focus that we've got right now on all these tools is kind of our short-term, what do we need right now on the ground, rather than what's in the future.
AT 2020 traps. They've been asked about quite a bit. Any thoughts on them?
That.
Yeah, they seem to be popping up quite regularly in our chat.
Well, so to be honest, the AT220 is one of the, we've got a few different types of traps, and that we've actually have come out of this funding and are now available. But as you saw from the presentation, there's still a lot that isn't available. Most of what we've funded is not available yet. So Po'uku, Cacophony, some of the ZIP products and AT220 are the ones that we are actually out and ready to start using. So that's why this question's coming up a lot, is because they're one of the tools that are actually out and functioning. And we've had incredible feedback on their working. I got to see them out in practice in Queenstown last week, which was exciting. And it's a good example of the research that needs to go into some of these tools. So, sometimes we have heard, rats do love them. So places that have a lot of rats are having can find it more difficult to use them because they claw, the rats are just constantly going in. But so that's a good kind of explanation of the research that we need to go in to say, this is the best tool for this place, this location, this knockdown phase, and these sort of habitat requirements. Now, the feedback has been fantastic. They're doing really, really well. We have funded the first generation, and we've given them some extra funding for the second generation. The sales are increasing massively, and yeah, it just depends on how much more, in terms of the topic you want to discuss around the AT220. The best thing to really do is to talk to people who have used them. So what I would suggest is people in the chat to say, if they want to kind of put down their email and say, yes, talk to me about the NZ, the AT220s, and get in touch, talking to people on how they use them. It is a new tool. It's a self-resetting device that has some technical asides to it. So it's useful to really have a good understanding about how to use it and the best practice around them. So again, I think that it's word of mouth, talking to people about how they worked in their environment and in their in their surroundings is really the best thing for you to do if you're looking at purchasing them.
George has jumped in from He's from New Zealand Auto Traps, and he's saying
Yeah,
they're happy
I
to
see
help.
him.
Hi, George.
Thanks, George. Hi,
And
George, for jumping in.
And he's put, look, you can contact them at info@nzautotraps.com, and they'll talk you through anything, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a video on Facebook the other day, and it was just, yeah, they had it out, I think, for one night. They had one auto trap out for one night, and there was, I don't know, 6 or 7 possums killed underneath it. So that was just one night. So yeah, it's check out their Facebook. You can get a bit more good videos of lots of possums dropping dead.
Absolutely. Derek writes, we know trapping is only dealing with the tip of the problem. So where is the research for a long-term method such as poisons, birth control, genetic solutions?
Good question. And again, I mentioned that just a bit earlier, but we are funding a lot of that research and work. It's just not something that I'm talking about in this presentation. So I really recommend heading over to our website and seeing our most recent media release on all the science that we're looking at, and you'll be able to see a lot of the past research that we've done. So I couldn't agree with you more. All of these tools really fall within our kind of short term, really kind of the short term of what we need devices out here right now over the next few years. Whereas all that research we're doing as well. We've got PhD students, we've got postdocs, we've got lots of contracts with a whole range of Crown Institute entities across New Zealand looking at all this stuff. So it's a great question, and we could talk for another hour on all of that. And maybe we do our next presentation. I'll pull my boss Dan up here, and he can give a presentation on all of that.
Yeah, good idea. Feral cats has come up a couple of times, or more than a couple as usual, and we did open that subject up on a previous webinar, which was great, and people were really good and informative. I suppose the question is, feral cats, is there development in a way of being able to eradicate them?
Yeah, so it's I know we always have to be careful with what we say.
Yeah, sure.
But so that they're not on our list of species, but we have a lot of projects. All of our landscape projects, cats is still something that is a focus. So you did see that we are, the live capture traps. We are helping, funding some tools to improve that side of it. And it's not fixing the problem by any means, but it is within the next couple of years at least, having some better tools to operate live capture traps more efficiently and more effectively. Now that it does not talk about eradication. It doesn't go towards eradication. So that's not my expertise at the moment. So I probably won't dive into it any more than that. But like I said, we are talking about how we can help our projects from an operational perspective being more efficient when it comes to live capture traps.
Exactly. And I suppose if there's a company out there that sees that as an opportunity and goes, okay, we've got a couple of ideas, and they can always approach you with their great ideas, can't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Sam asked you, we'll get off the cats thing now. Sam asks you, says, I don't see a lot of analysis on already collected data sets, but there is lots of useful information out there. Any intent to fund data analysis?
Oh, that's a great question.
Isn't that good?
Thank you for asking that question, because it's something that I feel like I'm pulling my hair out on all the time. And so you're totally right. Sam, is that? Yes, you're completely right. And there's a lot of work that we need to do on that. We need to first ensure that our data collection systems are really up to scratch. I personally don't feel like they are just yet. It's great. We've got TrapNZ, which is one of the mostly widely used tools, but we still need to motivate people to actually collect the data. And I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're there yet in terms of, collecting everything that we really need to collect. And so that's one thing, is actually collecting the data, having a really good data model, data framework for predator-free 2050 effort as a whole. And that's everything. That's ranging everything from just your predator data to diving into your Maori data lens of this effort. There is a whole long list of data that we need to understand, not just a list, but how it all links up. And we don't have that data model yet, unfortunately. And it's stuff that we're working on a collaborative group level to start to look at funding and getting underway. So that's part of it, is actually having the structure and the an emphasis on actually having the systems in place that we need to, and that we're actually collecting the data that we actually need to collect to answer a lot of these questions. And it's really important in terms of all of these new tools. We've got to be clear that we're collecting really good data while they're starting to be used, so we know if they're working or not, and we know if they're working the way that they should or not. You just chuck one of these tools into the into the landscape, but don't really have a good understanding of all the different intricacies on it working or not, whether it's temperature and rain, precipitation, and whether that makes it stop working. There's a whole long list of data that we need to understand if these tools are working really well. And then you've got all these different levels of data, whether it's like for research purposes, and someone like Andrew Veal needs very specific data for the research side, and then others, we really need specific data for the community side. So we are, in terms of what we're doing at Predator-Free 2050 Limited, we have worked on the predator control data standards. So one of those is around the idea is that at the moment we've got all these systems that are siloed, multiple different places, and all this information in multiple different places. So we have funded the development of the data standard, which will allow all of these different systems to export their data into the data standard format. You can look at that on our website as well. It's still a work in progress. We've still got more to do. But at least what we're starting to be able to do is that if you've got 3 different community groups in your area, each using a different system, TrapNZ, Catch IT, something else, Excel, paper, that we can start to pull all those together. So that's one of the other things that we're working on and funding. I could talk about this, a whole other presentation on this, but I'll stop there because I know we're running out of time. But it's a big thing that we need to push over the next year, is making sure that we can actually measure and assess the difference we're making. And we're probably not quite there yet with having those structures and systems in place. So great question.
From F&B Ark in the Park says we have over 20 years of pest control data collected at the Ark in the Park if you after something to look into. So, it's good, isn't it? People are offering up.
Yeah. And we really should be taking advantage of all of that data that a lot of these community groups have. There's a huge amount of data out there. And it would be an interesting PhD postdoc to really dive into these long historical data sets that some of these community groups have.
Fantastic. And finally, just your email or how we can contact, or people can contact you through your business, etc., so that anything and ideas they might have or help, they can flick it to you at the end of this.
Yeah, great. I put it in this chat thing. I guess I can put my
email yeah, you could, absolutely. Yeah, that's very clever. Thank you so much, Olivia. That's been a fantastic talk. You can see in your eyes just how excited you are about the area that you work in, which is just...
Well, everyone always makes fun of me because I don't talk about data. I get all excited. Here's the person who wants to talk about data. So, yes, I get excited about that one. So there, I just threw that in there. And again, just to reiterate, I am the person who's helping to kind of manage these contracts, work with them. I don't know the ins and outs of all. I don't know the ins and outs of all of the science behind everything, but I'm in a huge congratulations to our developers and the hard work that they've put in. This is really their work, not mine. So I'm here just to give a brief overview, but huge congratulations to all the developers that we're working with.
Tremendous. Olivia, thank you so much. Thanks to all the questions, everybody. And so interesting as always. Lovely to have you, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
No trouble. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.